Lyra sat on the cold stone floor of her prison, staring at the small window far above her head. The sky outside was dark, scattered with stars that seemed too distant to matter. For years, she had counted those stars, naming them silently in her mind, as if remembering their names could somehow bring back the freedom she had lost. She had been a warrior once, proud and fearless, moving across her world with purpose and strength. Now she was just a shadow of herself, trapped in a cell that smelled of dust and sorrow. Every day was the same. The sun rose beyond her reach. The guards came and went without notice, and the silence pressed down on her like a weight she could not lift. She remembered the day it all changed. The battle had been fierce, the screams of her comrades echoing in her ears. They had fought for their people, for their homes, and for the future they believed in. Lyra had led them with courage, her sword striking fast, her mind sharp and decisive. But betrayal had come from within. One of her own had opened the gates, letting the enemy through. Chaos had consumed the battlefield, and in the end, she was the one captured. She had been dragged from the ruins of her world, beaten, broken, and thrown into this stone prison far from everything she loved. The years had blurred together. Lyra could not remember the exact number, only that time had lost meaning. Days, months, perhaps even years, it no longer mattered. She survived, yes, but survival was a hollow victory. Her muscles ached, her mind ached, and worst of all, her spirit ached. She whispered to the walls every night, telling them stories she feared no one would ever hear. She told them about the rivers she had crossed, the mountains she had climbed, the laughter she had shared with friends who were now gone. Sometimes she imagined the stars outside were listening, tiny points of light that could carry her words across the universe. Lyra had long stopped expecting rescue. She knew no one would come for her. Her people were defeated, scattered or dead. The enemy that held her had no reason to release her. Hope, she thought bitterly, was a dangerous thing. It could grow inside a prisoner's heart only to be crushed under the weight of reality. And yet, in the deepest part of her being, a small spark refused to die. She could not explain it, could not name it, but sometimes she felt it flicker like a candle in the dark. The prison itself was cruelly designed. High walls of black stone blocked any view of the outside world. The doors were reinforced with alien metal, impervious to her strength. Guards passed rarely, and when they did, their eyes were cold, their expressions unreadable. She had tried to escape before, of course, as any prisoner with a heartbeat would, but every attempt ended in failure. Every plan she made was discovered, every weakness she tried to exploit was covered. Slowly, she had learned that the prison was not just a place of captivity. It was a place that could break even the strongest mind. And yet, Lyra refused to completely surrender. She still moved carefully in her cell, still exercised her body, still listened to the rhythms of life outside her window. She kept herself alive not just out of instinct, but out of stubbornness. She refused to be erased, refused to become just another forgotten soul locked away in darkness. Even as despair pressed against her, she clung to the memory of herself, the warrior who had once fought for everything. That Lyra, she reminded herself, was still inside, waiting. One night, she sat cross-legged in the corner, staring at the stars once again. She whispered her own name, as if calling herself back to life. "Lyra," she said softly. "I remember who I am. I will not forget." Her voice trembled, but the words held weight. Somewhere, deep inside, she still believed in a world beyond the prison walls, a world she had not seen in too long. She could feel the faint pulse of hope, weak but alive, reminding her that perhaps, just perhaps, life had not completely abandoned her. She did not know how long she would remain here. She did not know if anyone would ever come for her. But she knew one thing: she had survived everything else. And as long as she survived, the spark inside her could not be extinguished. Lyra closed her eyes, letting the darkness of the cell wrap around her like a cold cloak. But beneath the cold, beneath the despair, beneath the silence, something stubborn refused to die. She thought she would remain behind prison forever, but deep inside, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, freedom had not forgotten her yet. Lyra had long grown used to the silence of her prison, but that silence shattered one evening. The walls of her cell shook suddenly, faint at first, then with a force that made dust fall from the ceiling. She jumped to her feet, muscles tensing, heart pounding in a rhythm that had become rare for her. The heavy door of her cell creaked, slow and deliberate, as if time itself had stopped to watch. A figure stepped inside. Lyra froze, unsure if she should attack or retreat. The stranger did not move aggressively, did not raise a weapon. He was human, she realized immediately. Pale-skinned, with sharp eyes that reflected curiosity rather than fear, he seemed impossibly fragile for someone entering an enemy prison. Yet the calm in his stance, the quiet confidence in his step, told her he was not ordinary. "Hello," the human said softly, his voice carrying across the stone room like a gentle wind. "I'm here to help." Lyra laughed bitterly, the sound sharp against the walls. "Help you? You can't even survive here for more than a minute, and yet you expect to save me. Foolish human." Her arms crossed defensively. Every nerve in her body screamed that this was a trap. She had been betrayed once. She would not be fooled again. The human tilted his head slightly, his expression calm but unreadable. "Maybe," he said. "But sometimes trying is enough. And sometimes it's better than doing nothing." Lyra studied him carefully. She had never trusted easily, and she doubted anyone would dare enter this prison unarmed. But there was something different about him. He did not radiate fear or hunger or greed. He carried himself with a strange kind of hope, a stubborn light in his eyes that refused to dim even in the darkest place. "Why?" she asked finally, her voice low and cautious. "Why would a human care about me? Why cross galaxies for someone you don't even know?" The human, whose name she soon learned was Elias, smiled faintly. "Because some things are worth fighting for, no matter how far you have to go. I've heard your story, Lyra, and I couldn't ignore it." Lyra shook her head. "You know nothing of my story. You don't know what they will do to you if you stay here, what I have endured, what I have lost. Leave, human. You are risking too much." "I already know the risk," Elias said quietly, stepping closer without making her feel cornered. "But if I can help even a little, if I can give you a chance to see the sky again, then it is worth it." Lyra's chest tightened. The words were dangerous. They stirred something she had tried to bury: hope. She had stopped imagining freedom years ago. She had accepted that this stone cage was her world, that these walls were her life. And yet, hearing Elias speak with such determination made her heart ache with longing for what she thought she had lost forever. She turned away, gripping the edge of the wall as if it could anchor her sanity. "Hope is dangerous," she muttered. "It kills you slowly when it vanishes. You think you can bring it back? You don't know what it means to live here." Elias's gaze softened, not with pity, but with understanding. "I know enough," he said. "Enough to see that you deserve more than this. Enough to try. And if I fail, at least I tried. But I won't fail, Lyra, not if you help me." For the first time in years, Lyra considered the impossible. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to believe that someone had come all this way for her? Every instinct screamed to push him away, to survive alone as she had learned to do. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, a voice she had almost forgotten, that maybe, just maybe, freedom was still possible. Elias crouched slightly to meet her eyes, his gaze steady and calm. "I won't force you," he said. "But I will not leave without trying. And if you choose to trust me, we might just get out of here." Lyra's heart beat faster than it had in years. The thought of leaving this prison, of stepping into a world beyond stone and dust, terrified her, but it also made her feel alive. She had imagined rescue before, dreamed of it in whispered nights, but this human, this strange, fearless human, was offering it to her. She took a hesitant step forward. "And if I say yes?" she asked softly. "Then we begin," Elias replied. "One step at a time. You and me together." Lyra swallowed hard. Her mind raced with doubts and fears, but for the first time in her life behind bars, she felt something she had thought impossible: hope. The spark inside her, long buried under despair, flickered and grew. Maybe she would not remain behind prison forever. Maybe, just maybe, a human had come to remind her what it meant to be free. The first night Elias spent in the prison with her, Lyra could not sleep. She sat against the cold stone wall, watching him move quietly through the small space. He did not seem afraid. He was calm, patient, and observant, as if he had entered a place of danger before and survived. Lyra had never seen a human like him, so determined, yet so gentle. The spark of hope in her chest grew a little brighter. "Tell me everything," Elias said softly, kneeling near the faint light of the barred window. "Every detail of this place. Every guard, every passage, every trap. If I am going to get you out, I need to know it all." Lyra hesitated. Her first instinct was to protect herself. She had survived years by knowing more than anyone else, by hiding secrets that kept her alive. Could she really trust him with such knowledge? But something in his eyes, something raw and unwavering, made her nod slowly. Maybe, for the first time, she could let someone share her burden, she began. She described the hidden tunnels beneath the floorboards, the guard rotations, and the patterns of the surveillance devices that monitored her every move. Her voice trembled at first, weighed down by years of fear, but with each word, she felt a strange relief, as if the walls themselves were listening and recording her story. She showed Elias where the stone was weaker, where a small hand could slip through a crack, and where the shadows could hide them. Elias listened carefully, asking questions, taking notes, and sometimes pausing to consider a detail she had almost forgotten. He did not judge her for the time she had spent in fear. He did not hurry her or interrupt. He only observed, patient and focused. Lyra realized he was unlike any soldier or explorer she had ever known. He was human, yes, but human in a way that made her believe in more than just survival. "You have thought about escape for years," Elias said quietly after she finished. "And you know this place better than anyone. But knowing alone isn't enough. You need someone who can act with you. I can be that someone." Lyra shook her head. "I have tried to trust before. It always ended in betrayal. How do I know you are different?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because I am not asking you to trust blindly. I am asking you to see me as an ally. And even if you fail, I will not leave you behind. That is all I can promise." The words touched her more than she expected. No one had ever promised her safety before. No one had ever said they would not abandon her. The thought that someone might truly fight for her made her chest tighten with emotion. Maybe, after all these years, she could take the first step toward freedom. They spent the next few nights planning. Lyra taught him the silent ways of the prison, how to move without making a sound, how to watch the guards' patterns, and how to sense danger before it arrived. Elias absorbed everything with patience, asking questions when something was unclear and offering ideas when he noticed weaknesses she had missed. He moved like he belonged, and slowly, Lyra began to believe he might be right. Maybe they could do this. Maybe she could finally leave. "Are you ready?" Elias asked one night, standing near the faint light of the barred window. "If we try this, there is no turning back. The guards will hunt us, the walls will fight us, and danger will be everywhere. You have to be certain you want freedom more than you fear it." Lyra took a deep breath. The words cut through the fear she had carried for years. She remembered the life she had lost, the laughter she had shared, and the skies she had once run beneath. She felt the spark of hope burn brighter, stronger. "I am ready," she said firmly. "I will not remain here forever. I will not be a prisoner any longer." Elias nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "Then we moved together. One step at a time. Trust me as I trust you." Lyra felt something she had not felt in years, courage. It was fragile, yes, and tinged with fear, but it was alive. The walls of her prison had contained her body, but they could no longer contain her spirit. She realized that freedom had always been possible. She had only needed someone to remind her that it was worth reaching for. That night, she lay down on the cold floor, not in despair, but in anticipation. For the first time in years, she dreamed not of survival, but of escape. She dreamed of stepping beyond the walls, of feeling the wind on her face, of running under the stars again. And beside her, Elias rested quietly, human and stubborn, ready to turn her dream into reality. Lyra closed her eyes with a newfound resolve. The prison had held her for too long. The time had come to fight for herself, to reclaim her life. She thought she would remain behind prison forever, but now, with a human by her side, she finally felt that freedom might not be a distant dream after all. The night air outside the prison was sharp and cold, but it smelled like freedom. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she followed Elias through the narrow passages she had memorized over years of captivity. Each step was careful, precise, every movement calculated. The walls around them were dark, silent and oppressive, yet they seemed smaller now, as if the promise of freedom made them less intimidating. Elias moved beside her silently, his human form a strange mixture of vulnerability and strength. Lyra could not stop glancing at him, wondering how he could be so calm when every instinct in her body screamed danger. "You make it look easy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He glanced at her and gave a small smile. "It's not easy, but it's worth it." They reached the first guard station. Lyra's stomach tightened. Years of fear returned in a wave, but she pushed it down, letting her training take over. She moved like a shadow, gliding silently past the sleeping figure, signaling Elias to follow. He moved with surprising grace, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Together, they were careful, synchronized, A team that had formed out of necessity and trust. They entered the narrow tunnels beneath the prison, passages she had crawled through countless times in secret. Now they were a pathway to freedom, not a place to hide. She led Elias through twists and turns, showing him the hidden weaknesses in the walls, the loose stones that could serve as steps or distractions. The journey was slow, painstaking, but every step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she had thought lost forever. At one point, a guard stirred above them. Lyra froze, heart hammering in her chest. She pressed herself against the wall, signaling Elias to do the same. The footsteps passed, slow and deliberate, and then vanished into the distance. She exhaled softly, realizing her body had been holding tension for years, waiting for moments like this. Now every heartbeat was a reminder that she was alive, that she could act, that she could fight for herself. Hours seemed like minutes as they navigated the prison's secret passages. Elias had brought small tools, human ingenuity in its purest form, picking locks and disarming traps that Lyra had assumed were permanent barriers. She watched him work, a mixture of awe and disbelief in her eyes. Humans were fragile, yes, but clever beyond measure. He reminded her that strength came in many forms, not just the physical, not just the force of a blade. Finally, they reached the massive gate that had held her for years. Lyra ran her hands over the cold metal, feeling its weight, the years of confinement pressing against her palms. Elias crouched beside her, whispering instructions. Together, they worked, sweat dripping, muscles straining, minds focused. Time stretched, the silence around them thick and heavy, but they did not stop. Then, with a final click, the gate opened. The sound was quiet, almost insignificant, but to Lyra, it was a symphony. She stepped forward, hesitating for only a moment before her feet touched the ground beyond the prison walls. The wind whipped her hair around her face, sharp and alive. For the first time in years, she breathed freely, taking in the night sky, the stars, and the scent of the world she had been denied for so long. She turned to Elias, feeling a mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and something new joy. I thought I would never see this again, she whispered, her voice trembling. Elias nodded, his calm smile unwavering. Humans are stubborn, he said. And sometimes that's enough. They moved quickly through the outer terrain, keeping low and quiet, yet every step forward felt like reclaiming a part of her life. Lyra felt strength returning to her muscles, courage filling her chest, and hope spreading through her mind. She realized that freedom was not just about escaping walls, it was about reclaiming herself. Her choices, her life. When the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, Lyra stood on a small ridge overlooking the mountains. The world was vast and alive, untouched by prison walls, and waiting for her. She looked at Elias, and for the first time, she saw him not just as a stranger, but as a companion who had given her the greatest gift she had ever received, a chance to live again. I thought I would remain behind prison forever, she whispered to the wind. But you reminded me what it feels like to be free. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. You didn't need reminding, he said softly. You just needed a chance to believe it again. Lyra smiled, the wind carrying her laughter across the mountains. The prison behind her was nothing but a memory now. Ahead, the stars and the world awaited, full of possibility. And for the first time in her life, she truly believed that freedom was not just a dream, it was real, and it was hers. Lyra's legs ached, but for the first time in years, every step she took felt alive. She moved carefully alongside Elias as they descended the rugged mountains, their path lit only by the faint glow of distant stars. Freedom was intoxicating, yet fragile. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind could be a threat. Still, Lyra felt stronger than she had in a long time. She had survived her prison, and now she was moving through a world that was vast and unpredictable. Elias walked beside her, quiet but vigilant. His human eyes scanned the terrain constantly, alert to any danger. Lyra watched him in admiration. Humans were not as strong as warriors of her people, yet his courage amazed her. He had risked everything to reach her, to offer her a chance at life beyond stone walls. Slowly, she began to see humans differently, not fragile. Not limited, but stubborn, clever, and fearless when it mattered most. As they rested near a small stream, Lyra leaned back on a rock, listening to the water flow. She had long forgotten the sound of moving water outside her cell. The gentle ripples were like a song, soft and soothing. I never imagined I would hear this again, she whispered. I forgot what it felt like to live beyond the walls. Elias crouched beside her, his expression calm. Sometimes freedom is in the little things, he said. The sound of water, the smell of the earth, the wind on your face. All of it reminds you why we fight to survive. Lyra smiled faintly. She realized he was right. Her entire life had been focused on survival, on enduring, on waiting for something she thought would never come. But now she was learning that life was more than just escaping danger. Life was feeling, experiencing, and remembering that she was more than a prisoner. Their journey continued through forests and rocky terrain. The nights were cold, the paths treacherous, but every step forward strengthened Lyra's resolve. She found herself talking more than she had in years, sharing memories of her past, of her family, and the life she had dreamed of before the war. Elias listened without interruption, without judgment, only encouragement. His presence was grounding, a steady anchor in a world that had long felt chaotic and cruel. "You've changed me," Lyra admitted one night as they rested beneath a sky ablaze with stars. "I forgot what it felt like to hope. I forgot what it meant to trust someone." Elias smiled softly. "You didn't forget. You just needed someone to remind you. Humans can do that sometimes. We are small, fragile. But we try. We fight. And we believe in each other." Lyra's heart swelled at his words. For years she had carried despair like a heavy cloak. Now that cloak was falling away, thread by thread, replaced by a warmth she had not felt in a long time. Hope was no longer a dangerous dream, it was real, alive. And breathing beside her in the form of Elias Dot as they moved through a dense forest the next morning. Lyra noticed the subtle signs of danger-broken branches. Faint footprints, the scent of others nearby. She realized that while freedom was exhilarating, it was not without risk. Every step required vigilance. Every movement demanded focus. Yet for the first time, she did not feel trapped by fear. She was alive, aware, and capable. Elias noticed her pause and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll make it," he said simply. "Together." Lyra nodded. She had believed in her own strength for years, but she had not realized how much it could grow when someone believed in her too. She began to understand that freedom was not just about escaping walls. It was about having the courage to trust, to feel, and to move forward despite fear. By the time the sun rose, casting golden light through the trees, Lyra felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. The journey was far from over, and danger still lay ahead, but she no longer felt like a prisoner of her past. She was running towards something greater, life itself, raw and unfiltered, full of hope, full of possibility. For the first time in years, Lyra smiled freely, her laughter ringing through the forest like music she had long forgotten. Elias walked beside her, and she realized that the bond they had formed was more than survival, it was trust. It was friendship, and perhaps something deeper. Together, they faced the unknown. Two unlikely allies united by courage, stubbornness, and the undeniable spark of hope that neither prison nor fear could ever extinguish. Lyra had escaped her cage. But more importantly, she had begun to reclaim herself. And as long as she walked beside Elias, she knew that the stars above were no longer distant. They were guiding her toward a life she had once thought impossible. The mountains ahead were quiet, almost eerily so, but Lyra knew better than to trust the silence. Their escape had been daring, and now the enemy would surely hunt them with everything they had. She could feel it in the air, a tension that made her muscles taut and her senses sharper than they had been in years. Every shadow could hide danger, every sound could signal pursuit. Yet for the first time, Lyra did not tremble with fear, she was ready. Elias walked beside her, his human form lean but steady. He had learned much from her during their journey, the quiet ways of survival, the patience needed to read danger, the courage to act despite fear. And yet, there was a spark in him that Lyra had never seen in any warrior of her people, a stubborn, unyielding belief that they could face whatever came next. As they descended into a narrow valley, the distant hum of engines and the faint flicker of searchlights confirmed her fears. Soldiers of the enemy had found their trail. Lyra felt the adrenaline surge through her veins. She gripped her weapon tightly, the familiar weight reassuring, reminding her of the strength that had once defined her. "We have to move quickly," she whispered to Elias. "They are closing in." Elias nodded. "I've got you. Just stay close and follow my lead." The enemy forces were skilled, relentless, and numerous. They had the advantage of numbers and technology, yet Lyra felt no despair. This was not a prison she could not escape, it was a battlefield she could fight on her own terms. And she would, with Elias beside her. The first soldiers appeared on the ridge above them. Lyra's heart did not falter. With a swift, precise motion, she neutralized the closest one, moving with a fluidity born of years of training. Elias acted with courage and cleverness, using his human ingenuity to disarm traps and redirect the enemy's focus. Together, they were a storm, fast and unpredictable. Lyra realized something in that moment. Humans were not weaker because they lacked strength. They were powerful because of their resilience, their unpredictability, their refusal to give in even when the odds were impossible. Elias fought beside her, clever, brave, and determined, reminding her that courage came in many forms. The battle raged through the valley. Lyra moved with precision, every strike calculated, every decision deliberate. She could feel her old self returning, the warrior who had once led armies, who had faced impossible odds and survived. And now she was not alone. Elias was not just a human. He was her ally, her equal, and perhaps the reason she had survived to this moment. When the last soldier fell, Lyra stood panting, sweat and blood streaked across her face. She looked at Elias, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel gratitude, relief, and awe all at once. "You saved me, human," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Not just from the prison, but from fear itself. Elias shook his head, brushing dust from his clothes. "You saved yourself," he said softly. "I just gave you a push." Lyra laughed softly, the sound a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. She realized that she had indeed saved herself. Every year of suffering, every moment of despair, had brought her to this point. Yet she had also been reminded that survival was not meant to be solitary. Courage was stronger when shared, hope brighter when nurtured by another dot as dawn broke over the mountains. Casting golden light across the valley, Lyra felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. The battle was over, but it was not just a victory over soldiers or walls. It was a victory over the fear that had haunted her for years. She was no longer a prisoner of her past. She was alive, free, and powerful. Elias looked at her with a quiet smile. "We've done it," he said. "The hardest part is over." Lyra nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "The hardest part was believing it could happen," she whispered. "And you reminded me to believe." Together, they stood on the ridge, looking out over the mountains that had once been her prison and now were her path to a new life. Lyra knew that challenges would come again, that danger was never truly gone. But she also knew that she would never face it alone, and that the spark of hope Elias had reignited in her would burn brighter than any fear. For the first time in years, Lyra felt truly free. And as long as Elias walked beside her, she knew they could face whatever lay ahead, together.